Dialectical University administration and show business who still have the power to call out their victim on so-called honor code have proven that my peers were not interested in the evidence that AIDS was an attack. This was journalism, was convincing, and has led to many byways of confirmation. Instead, what they were doing was playing one-upmanship with Catholic protests. See, Vince Irini wanted his to be top dog in the I got arrested circuit. And they had a couple of messiahs in place, John Lennon, Sean Straub, Michael Foucault, all took leave so that no one could out-argue them. And it's a gruesome lasso that Clint Eastwood's Rowdy Party have thrown over the entire generation of people living alive today. Okay. Now let's get to the hooligan reasoning. I think it's very helpful to stay in touch with reality. So I'm going to help you by focusing this discussion on the reality. Not many people who work with even the police, where internal affairs is abhorred, find a woman as brilliant as Sergeant Cecilia. And she was in the community college circuit of police academy that I attended. I was fortunate enough to have some discussions with her. She's no different than anybody else in the police who abhor internal affairs, but she was open-minded enough to show us the film Serpico. The film itself I have problems with. I don't know Serpico himself well enough, but I've read his posts and agree with them. She understands the vicissitudes of undercover work, has heard all the stories about vice agents who became part of the drug culture, came underworld culture. And I told her I was just a student. I wasn't a card-carrying journalist from NBC. I was a battered individual. I suspect one of the reasons why Sergeant Cecilia insisted on giving me another chance at college and hearing me out is that privately the Pittsburgh police have overruled the Post-Gazette and Peter Gabriel's Real Worlds because they know who the Pittmans were. And the fact that I was held hostage in a stolen car by the Pittmans tells them everything they need to know about why we moved, why I couldn't express the horror, why I was always frightened and biting my nails, why I was hiding in my towel closet. And I told her the reason I was able to get in as deeply as I did on Mount Desert Island was because I kept telling myself this can't be real. And she said, I understand completely. Now, let's contrast that with people who did it, who pretend they don't understand. They say, he wanted a girlfriend, he wanted to get married, he was too immature to have children. They understand and are just lying. They have left behind documents that say things like, the persona is subjected to successive degradations of the X motive. When I talked to Howard Diversion, I told him I suspected something like that was going on, and he said, tisk, tisk. And then I was able to prove that I was right, that that was going on because of what they called the forces impinging on the persona's experience. Pigeonholed, whisper campaign. They used a lot of different slander mechanisms to make clear that they were running me through a gauntlet that they claimed was hazing. But I knew that that wasn't true because there were severe neurological injuries. There were huge arsons. There was terrorism, and it got worse to the point where there were bloody murder, like of Searcy Kennedy and so on. So it was clear that I was right, that something needed to be investigated. And the poachers call themselves the generals of love. They say, go out and sleep with him and show the world that that's all he wants. And, and enough people are stupid. I don't know another word. I mean, I hate to call my peers, if there are any real ones. I mean, the imaginary peers win on it. But I hate to call you bad names. I'm sure that you were wise enough to see that what I'm telling you is true as Sergeant Cecilia. So I take it back. Sergeant Cecilia was not stupid. So I asked for a lie detector test. I asked the stress evaluator, who said, you're obviously telling the truth. I couldn't be more factual than reporting what Wilsell said. He testified, virtually admitted it. And if you support the ruinous, dismal abuse of our peers by things like COVID, I mean, go ahead. I can't stop you from supporting something like that. But I don't support it. I don't support sacrificial war games. I don't think Vince Irini is anything other than Pittsburgh's favorite pedophile advocate. I've been tortured enough, and it gets tiresome arguing my life. But what the brilliance with the spinner beanie said was he's trying to get 15 minutes, an extra minute of fame at the Slot Down Open mic. Remember, these were the Seattle queers who went along with the whole thing and brought our grannies to COVID. I mean, don't forget that this is what they call building momentum. Okay, so again, I'm up against people who I oppose. I totally oppose them. Disabuse yourself of the idea that their arguments are meaningful. But they say he was sleeping with girls because he said that he wasn't afraid of getting contaminated, so we should contaminate him. And the administration, following this absurd line of rivalry, because they were jealous of the girl, because I loved her, they poisoned me in the mouth. They laugh about it. The CDC makes little weapons. We'll give them skin creatures and stuff. They're psychotic people in administration. Now, getting back to what I opened with, which was Cecilia's understanding. You have to extend focus on what was real. I got in so deeply because I kept telling myself this can't be real. I wanted to believe Rosa. You see, you have to understand that that's not a hard thing to understand. That's not a hard thing to understand. You could say, oh, well, she was too beautiful for your kind. Well, I had been unimpeachably loyal to Ken Crimson and Peter Gabriel. Admittedly, we had irreconcilable differences over what Zell said and confirmed he said. But I did not yet suspect that they were behind Zell, which I now do suspect. Instead, I thought that maybe they were sitting in an office the way Officer Cecilia was sitting in an office saying, this is so suspicious and Mac is so clear about what had happened that I really have to find out what actually is going on. Because she was terrified and angered by the AIDS attack too. She wasn't afraid of Donald Trump. I am. But because she could not believe it was real either, she could understand completely getting in too deep. And I got in too deep with Rosa because I believed in her. Okay, that was a mistake, I admit that. But these are fascists who want to control the world's behavior. And they have correlated Revolution Number 9 to dibs on the virgins and stuff. And this is Trumpy Toon's contribution to the human race. I don't buy it. You want to see my sympathies? Look at Barista Gate. It explains how I feel about the whole Seattle bogosity situation and their diabolical hatred of anybody who they see as insubordinate to their manias. They had their hatred of just poetry sucks. And they didn't try to warn people. That's what Barista Gate is about. They didn't try to intervene to prevent the at-risk from getting engulfed by confusion. And you can look at my poem, Home Girl, from COVID. These are the things that tell the truth. So you need, when you think about the spinner beanie on her coat, the insubordination weirdos who run around, I will do what Simon says, I will do what Cornel West says, and say, I will do what Bill Gates says, I will do what the Jewish Defense League says, and then sell the Will Zell, who was promoting Goebbels. And this guy who went by the nickname Dusseldorf and had a Confederate flag on his hat. And these men who attacked me blindside, nearly ripped my head off as a child, are honorary the black warriors. They're the ancestors. They were in the Ku Klux Klan. They're the ancestors, are warriors, because that's what the Green Party has proposed, that they're just a tribe. And they want to make a conflict line about just acknowledging the truth of what happened. So what I think you need to do when you look at their spinner beanie insubordinate craziness is, number one, identify for what it is. It's the administrators of the University of Pittsburgh and the University of Washington taking out their stupidity and their brain damage and their inner sanctum stuff on everybody else, because they can't tell the truth about this goddamn thing. It's the Fernhollow Bridge gang who worship, piranhas and fish bowls at the fraternity parties. These are Pitt students, supposedly from the United States of America, behaving like a James Bond villain and getting a pat on the head from Roger Waters. And instead focus on the reality. I was trying to find out what was going on. There were people who were trying to persuade me, who were close to me, that they were on the level, as they still do. That's not an easy thing to cope with. I'm deaf. I was washing dishes. It's not hard to wash dishes, but it's hard to do 2 full-time dishwashing jobs and even write a poem. I couldn't think. I was homeless for 2 years. I didn't have access to the education that my rivals had because I couldn't go to college. They took it out on a deaf girl who has Down syndrome. Vince Irenia's top dog? You got to be kidding me. They take it out on a deaf girl who has Down syndrome because she broke the line. She crossed the line by teaching me sign language so I could go to school and find out about linguistic anthropology. I had no idea what Jaime Carbonell was up to until I took a course in linguistic anthropology. How am I supposed to defend myself from an asshole like Robert Fripp's secret tapes when I don't even know what linguistic anthropology is?